Today's topic is Swami Vivekananda's contribution to religious thought. It's a very challenging, interesting topic from the standpoint of religious history of the world, especially in an age when established religions or organized religions are encountering challenges from evolutionists who question the logic of creationism and who put the whole blame, or who criticize religion for most of the problems the world has encountered during our times. There are many atheists and thinkers who argue that religion is anti-humanistic, it is anti-scientific, and it is opposed to some of the discoveries of modern science and technology. I shall just, for your interest, I shall just quote a few of the criticisms put forward by great journalists like Christopher Hitchens, scientists like Richard Dawkins, in our own times. The teachings of religion about the origin of the cosmos and the origin and development of biological species contradict well-established science. Which means religion is basically a negation of the truths discovered by modern science. Again, all of the traditional arguments for the existence of God have significant defects. The entire theological arguments related to ontology, related to the ideas of a fundamental or final cause, or the fundamental principle from which the world has emerged, are defective. All of the traditional attempts to explain how the enormous sufferings that afflict sentient creatures is compatible with an all-powerful and all-good God are an exercise in sophistry. So, on the one hand, you argue that God is compassionate, merciful, kind. God who created this world looks after His creation. All these ideas are just attempts to explain the ontological principle of certain fundamental theological dogmas. Because they often argue, see, there have been more bloodsheds and wars in this world in the name of religion and on behalf of God than in the name of religion, in the name of atheism or humanism. We have only 3 great episodes in world history where people who did not believe in God caused so much of genocide, so much of destruction of human life and property. The Mao, Stalin, and Hitler. But there have been scores of wars in the world, not only crusades, but minor warfare, involving the massacre or genocide of millions of people, right from the origin of religion. So how can you justify a religion which has caused so much of bloodshed and destruction to humanity? That's one argument. Another argument is religion inflames tribal and ethnic hostility. See, very often, protagonists of different monotheistic religious traditions overemphasize the anthropological, the sociological, and the ethnic aspects of religion, or the cultural aspects of religion, than the fundamental spiritual aspects. See, every religious prophet has got 2 fundamental approaches. In fact, they are the products of history, and they are also makers of history. They come as a response to certain cultural cross-currents of their own age. And also, they bring with them the essence of their tradition and then reinterpret and hand over to the next generation. So in a way, they stand at the junction of history. But what really happens is, in later centuries, theologians and dogmatists try to interpret religion in terms of the narrow geographical, anthropological, sociological, and cultural or nationalistic setting in which these great prophets have taught the world. See, a prophet, when he teaches the world, he will have to use the similes, the language, and the figures of speech prevailing in his culture. And the interpretation of the fundamental spiritual truths will be very often clothed in a language to which he is born. And people often emphasize this aspect, the sociological, the cultural aspect, neglecting the fundamental spiritual aspects. Spirituality is unifying, it is synthesizing, it is universal, and it is harmonizing. But if you interpret spirituality in nationalistic terms, in anthropological terms, it becomes highly divisive. It becomes an age, something which fragments humanity. This has happened in the history of all religions. That's why many modern atheists and scientists who are very sincere, in many ways they are very broad-minded, and they are intellectually very much enlightened. Only the one flaw with them is they are as fanatical in upholding their scientism as religious fanatics are fanatical in upholding their fanatical beliefs. So scientific fanaticism is as much a problem, as much a liability from an intellectual point of view as religious fanaticism. This aspect is very often forgotten by modern critics of religion. Now, in this context, we have to view Swamiji's contribution. Now, what are the fundamental contributions of Swamiji? On the one hand, we have to remember, whatever Swamiji taught, he taught on the basis of the Upanishads, the eternal, spiritual, philosophical text of ancient India. He stressed again and again, whatever I have taught, it's only Upanishads. I have taught only the Upanishads. Now, what are his fundamental spiritual ideas or religious ideas? On the one hand, Swamiji said that religion is as scientific as science itself. Religion is not based on a faith system. See, if you are asked to believe in an old bearded man sitting above the cloud who creates this world and who divides his own creation, humanity, into believers and non-believers, into two conflicting, warring groups of believers and non-believers, promising reward for the believers, reward of heaven, and threatening the unbelievers with eternal damnation. So many of these great atheists like Professor Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens, they question this idea. This God is much worse than many of us human beings. Human beings are certainly much more broad-minded. How can you portray God as a compassionate, kind-hearted being and at the same time argue that he created hell and he condemns a section of humanity who are unbelievers into eternal damnation, eternal hellfire? How can you believe in such a God? So they these are the questions they put forward. Now Swamiji says God is not somebody who sits above the clouds. God is an immanent spiritual principle. And that reality, that God is also the all-pervading, omnipresent reality. And as we realize this immanent divinity within all of us, we become better human beings. It is a kind of inward journey. When we realize our own divinity, we are actually self-discovering. We are rediscovering our own true nature. We are not getting a new knowledge. We are rather going back to our own true nature. It is a kind of homeward journey, homeward pilgrimage. And as we realize that we are, in fact, the immanent, the inner residing principle, which is immanent in all human beings, not only human beings, but the entire creation. That reality is also the all-pervading, omnipresent reality. The later discovery makes us better human beings, makes us more compassionate, makes us more universal in our outlook, Catholic in our outlook, broad-minded in our outlook. So on the one hand, as we discover our own inner reality, we become aware of our own identity with the divine. And simultaneously, the discovery, or rather the realization, that the same immanent principle is also the all-pervading reality. It enables us to look upon entire creation as one spiritual family. So it is not a dogma. It is based on the principle of universal spiritual humanism. Humanism based on nationalism, cultural identity, or scientific values are good, but they have certain serious flaws. Nationalistic humanism, again, creates barriers of nationality. Ethnic humanism or cultural humanism. See, even in ancient Rome, they had humanism. Only the members of the Senate, only the full-fledged free citizens of the Roman Empire were considered to be citizens. About 70% or 75% of the ancient Roman population were serfs or slaves who could be treated as negotiable commodities, could be bought and sold. So also modern scientific humanism, which doesn't allow you to ask the question, who am I? What's the origin of the universe? What is the fundamental essence of human existence? These questions are not allowed in modern science. The question why is not answered. The question how is answered. At least an attempt is made to answer this question. So Swamiji says religion is the very basis of humanism. But what is that religion? That religion is non-dualistic philosophy. See, very often when Swami Vivekananda returned to America, when he was traveling in South India, many adherents of Ramanujites and Madhvaites, the followers of dualism and qualified non-dualism, I mean, those who are not willing to accept the fundamental principles of non-dualism, they question Swamiji. Swamiji, why did you stress Advaita or non-dualistic philosophy? Then Swamiji said, see, if I had taught Visishtadvaita or qualified non-dualistic philosophy in the West, they would have said, we have our own Saint Francis of Assisi, we have our own Jesus Christ, perhaps the greatest Visishtadvaitin or qualified non-dualistic devotee the world has produced was Spinoza, who was greater than even Ramanuja, as a devotee of God. So if Swamiji had brought qualified non-dualism to Western world, they would have said there is nothing new in this. But when Swamiji interpreted Advaita, non-dualistic philosophy, which teaches the unity or oneness of not only human beings but the entire creation, it was altogether a new religious paradigm for the Western world. That is one unique contribution of Swami Vivekananda. Now, how did Swamiji argue this point? If you read different world scriptures, you will understand there are two fundamental categories in all the theological works. The essential spiritual ideas, which I already referred to. In all world religions, in the teachings of all the great prophets of the world, you can come across these highly universal spiritual ideas based on humanism, compassion, kindness, and all that. But you also come across a lot of dogmatism, a lot of parochialism, a lot of ultra-nationalistic ideas as the idea of a chosen people, and so on. So also in Hindu monotheistic tradition, Puranic tradition, mythological tradition, such ideas were found. Now, Swamiji stressed one point. We have to give more importance to the essential, fundamental, spiritual principles of all world religions, giving only secondary place to secondary details. Now, in all world religious scriptures, you find both the universal and also the parochial ideas. But in Vedantic tradition, there is a clear-cut approach in pointing out the universal and drawing a line of demarcation between the universal and the parochial. According to Vedantic tradition, whatever agrees with the Upanishads is to be accepted. And the Upanishads speak of the universal, unifying, fundamental, spiritual ideas. We teach us that the whole creation is one spiritual family. And God is not somebody to be searched in the external world. God is to be realized as one's own inner divine principle within. This is the essence of the universal aspect of Vedantic theological works. It's so-called Upanishads. Then there are what we call mythological works like the Puranas, and also certain codes which are called Smritis, which are more like constitutions, which contain a lot of secondary details. Sometimes highly ultra-nationalistic parochial ideas are found in the Smriti literature, in the code books, and also in the mythological books. See, some Puranas and Smritis tell you have to be born in India to get liberation. Such ideas, more like the views of the ancient Jews, priestcraft, the Sadducees and Pharisees. So such ultra-nationalistic ideas are found in all religious traditions, parochial ideas, divisive ideas. But there are also highly universal, harmonizing spiritual ideas. But Vedantic tradition clearly states that wherever there is a conflict between the ideas contained in the mythological works and the fundamental spiritual universal classics, you should completely discard, ignore the parochial nationalistic ideas, and you should uphold the fundamental principles of Upanishads. See, I'm just quoting from 3 Smritis because these are very, very important. And Swamiji's great contribution was he interpreted these ideas in modern English language. So, from an historical perspective, this was altogether a revolutionary contribution to world religious thought. See, one of the Smriti books, one of the code law books in ancient India was Jabala Smriti. Sudhi Smriti Virodheshu Srudireva Gariyasi Avirodhetu Sada Karyam Smartam Vaidikavat Sada. This is one verse in Jabala Smriti. It states this much. Whenever there is a conflict between the fundamental books like Shrutis or Upanishads and the ideas contained in the secondary canon, you should ignore the views of secondary textbooks and you should uphold the universal spiritual ideas of the Upanishadic text. this was not accepted in any of the monotheistic religious traditions. Now they are accepting it more because of historical compulsions or as a need for engaging in interreligious dialogue. But Swamiji was the first great world religious philosopher who introduced this idea to Western religious thought. Then there is another verse. Sudis Mudi Purananam Virodho Yatra Drishyade Tatra Sraudam Pramanam Syad Tayodvaidhe Smridirvara. This was stated by Vyasa. Vyasa, the great ancient sage of India, divided the entire spiritual or philosophical religious canon into three categories. One, the fundamental spiritual classics, Upanishads, Vedantic books, which contain the non-dualistic philosophy of Shankaracharya, based on which Shankaracharya established the non-dualistic philosophy or Advaita. This first category. Second category is called the law books, which contain many divisive ideas. You will be surprised. In many of the law books, there are ideas which are very much, very anti-humanistic, and there are many great sublime ideas also. Swamiji had a great respect for those sublime universal ideas, but Swamiji completely discarded the secondary details, which were somewhat divisive in nature. Third book is mythology. The category is called the Puranas, the mythological works. Now, Swamiji said that the ideas contained in the Upanishads should be upheld when the ideas contained in other religious books are in perfect agreement with the Upanishads. You may uphold them, otherwise you have to discard them. These ideas were stated by the ancient sages themselves, but they were confined to the old religious classics written in Sanskrit language about 4,000, 5,000 years back. Swamiji brought these ideas to Western world. But you see, 100 years back, you could not have dared to proclaim openly that the revealed books should be subjected to detailed critical analysis. It would have amounted to blasphemy or sacrilege. 400 years back, you would have been burned to death as a heretic. It happened during the Middle Ages. And it caused even any attempt to give more importance to spiritual ideas was always condemned. Two categories of intellectuals were condemned during the Middle Ages. One, Copernicus, Galileo, Maber, and others, who questioned the theological dogmas. And on the other hand, great mystics like Meister Eckhart, Spinoza, and several others. Many of them were not persecuted, but certainly life was not made easy for them during their time, because they upheld and practiced and realized the fundamental universal ideas of Christian or Jewish religious traditions. But in 19th century, Swamiji stressed this point. The fundamental spiritual ideas, the universal ideas, should be stressed and should be considered to be the first criterion to judge the true validity of religion. Third contribution was Swamiji graded the evolution of religious life into four categories: the level of rituals, the level of mythology, the stage of philosophy, and the stage of experience. All these four stages did exist in all religious traditions, but the dogmatic priestcraft or the clergy never allowed the great mystics to come out. Now, in 19th century, Swamiji said, in all religious traditions, there are four stages. The lowest and the grossest, the rituals. There can be no unity at this stage, because every religion has its own set of rules, regulations, and conventions. The second stage is mythology. There also there is a lot of diversity. The third stage is philosophy. There could be many common philosophical ideas in all religious traditions, but there will not be perfect unity or harmony. At the fourth stage, experience. At that stage, all religions essentially speak of the same truth. All these ideas are already enshrined in the most ancient Vedic book, Rigveda Samhita. Indram Mitram Varunam Agnirahu Adho Divyasa Suparna Gurutman Ekam Sat Vipraha Bagudha Vadanti Agnim Yamam Matarishwanamahu. This is the verse which says, you may call your God any name you like. Intelligent wise men call the same reality by different names, but the reality is one. The criterion for religious experience is our own intuitive inner spiritual experience. It is not faith, not confession. These were all enshrined in ancient Vedantic books, but Swamiji brought them to the limelight in 19th century. That's why in the ancient tradition, Vedantic tradition, it is stated, whatever is found in the secondary details, whatever is found in the second category of religious scriptures, which are in conflict with the highly humanistic, universal, spiritual ideas of the Upanishads, that portion which is in conflict with the Upanishadic ideas should be discarded. And the Upanishadic ideas, which are universal and spiritual and holistic and unifying, should be upheld, because the Upanishads teach us that humanity is one, reality is one, creation is one spiritual entity. Yet adrishtam hi vedeshu tad drashtavyam smridau kila ubhabhyam yet adrishtam hi tad puraneshu pathyade sudhi smudi puraneshu viruddheshu parasparam purvam biliyasyat idi nyaya vido viduhu. There is a special reason why I am quoting these verses. Because many students of Swami Vivekananda or Indian philosophy think that Swamiji brought these ideas and these ideas originated with Swamiji. But I want to remind you again and again that these ideas, these universal ideas are enshrined in the ancient Vedic literature. Swamiji brought them and interpreted in a language and style which modern rationalists, ultra-modern scientists, or neo-positivists, logical positivists, or evolutionists, or even communists like Marx and Engels could not question. See, when Swamiji came to America, what was the intellectual climate in Western world? Marx had already published his Das Kapital, and Marx and Engels together had already published Communist Manifesto. Darwin's book had already become the subject of drawing room conversation and intellectual debates in debating societies. Logical positivists and modern positivists and modern humanists have already established their clout among the intellectual circles. So religion, as preached and interpreted by clerical agencies or dogmatic evangelists, was criticized as anti-scientific and anti-humanistic, which won't consider the experience of the common people in this world into consideration. And it was also criticized as being against the new discoveries of Darwin, the theory of evolution. See, how can you reconcile with the idea that God was busy working hard for 6 days and then took rest on the seventh day, and they started watching his creation, with the idea that it took several centuries or millennia for modern man to evolve. So there was always an incompatibility between the school of evolutionists and the school of creationists. It still continues. Now, Swamiji said that from the standpoint of Advaita Vedanta, these ideas are absolutely secondary details. Modern Vedanta, as interpreted by Swamiji, can walk hand in hand with modern science and technology. Because whatever you do to explain the empirical world is right from the empirical point of view. But there is something beyond the empirical, which is called trans-empirical, beyond the present, beyond what the five senses of perception and mind bring to you. That reality is beyond the investigation of science. So science has its place, its relevance in its own realm. We need not question scientists. You need not put Galileo and Copernicus in prison. Let them discover. That was Vedantic approach. No need to persecute them. Let them be busy in explaining the empirical world which they experience, of which they are a part, in which they are living. But there is something beyond this, beyond the senses and beyond the mind, that is beyond the realm of modern science and technology. That is our own inner essence. That is consciousness we may call Atman or Brahman. Atman as the immanent principle, Brahman as the origin, the sustaining principle, and the ultimate destination of the universe. This was the essence of Swami Vivekananda's philosophy. And again, Swamiji made another revolutionary interpretation on religion. See, after the emergence of Marx and Engels, there was already a strong trend against religion, because established monotheistic religious agencies were always supporting the neo-rich people and also the various sovereign, the dynasties of Europe. So modern socialist humanists criticize religion as being anti-humanistic. Now Swamiji said, the entire creation is one, and as such there is perfect unity, harmony and oneness at the spiritual level. So the best form of worship you can do to God is to serve the man living next door to you. So that's why, as in Swamiji's words, the man living next door to you is the Taj Mahal of temples. The infinite oneness of the soul is the eternal sanction of all morality, all ethics, and all good actions. Here Swamiji projects non-dualistic philosophy, which teaches the unity of creation as the most solid foundation, the most scientific criterion for ethics and morality. So ethics and morality ultimately do not depend upon fear of God. Suppose somebody tells you, well, I don't care. I'm not afraid of going to hell if God sends me there. Then what answer can you give him? Suppose you tell him, well, by hurting your next door neighbor, you are hurting yourself, because you and your next door neighbor are not two different entities. You are one entity. This is the logic of Advaita as the essence of universal ethics, as Swamiji put it. The infinite oneness of the soul is the eternal sanction of all morality, all ethics, and all good actions. Again, another important contribution of Swami Vivekananda is this. On the basis of spirituality, there can be perfect unity and harmony between religions. There is no conflict between different religious principles. As I said, religion has got two distinct components. One is spirituality, which is rose of spirituality. Or the other is the thorn of dogmatism. Both are part of religious tradition. The prophets and founders of great religious traditions only emphasized the rose of spirituality, because their teachings are essentially universalistic. But in course of time, man tries to imprison God and religion within the prison walls of dogmatism. So, the faith in a God before whom you have to bow down and faith in an intermediary, either a priest or somebody, through whom alone you can communicate with God, and a faith in the infallibility of a single book, holy book, and then the faith in the infallibility of a set of rituals and conventions. These are the 4 prison walls of conventional religions. So within these prison walls, spirituality sometimes gets strangulated. Many mystics have tried to bring out this spirituality, but very often they have been persecuted, they have been rejected by the mainstream clergy over the centuries. Now, Swamiji said, in modern times, we have to emphasize these universal spiritual ideas based on experience, because religion is not dogma, religion is not just a belief, religion is not a set of rituals, but religion is experience. That is the manifestation of divinity already in man. So, every human being, man or woman for that matter, every being in this creation is essentially one with the spiritual principle. And God is not somebody whom you seek outside of us. God is the inner principle that we realize within all of us. And as we realize our own true nature, we also realize, as I said earlier, that it is present in the entire creation. So on the one hand, it makes you aware of your own divine reality. It also makes you aware of the divinity of the entire creation. So there is a twofold movement, inward movement and outward movement. Inward movement enables you to realize the divine within. The outward evolution enables you to look upon the entire creation as one spiritual entity. So you may call God by any name, or you may not give him any name at all. So such a religion can accommodate within its fold believers and also non-believers, theists and also non-theists. Because even a scientist or an atheist who proclaim that there is no God is able to make that proclamation because there is a divine consciousness within him. The one who denies God is non-different from the God whom he denies. In reality, that is the logic of Advaita. God doesn't depend upon our accepting him. Even if you reject God, God doesn't cease to exist. So why should a God be angry with you if you don't accept him? Why should he punish you and send you to hell with eternal damnation just because you are not willing to accept him? Or why should you give special regard, consideration, send and reward you with heaven if you accept him? Does his existence depend upon our accepting his ontological existence? That's the logic of Advaita. I am stating again and again, all these ideas were formulated by the great Adi Shankaracharya in 8th century in his commentaries on Brahma Sutras, Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, where he formulated this non-dualistic philosophy into a compact, intricate philosophical system. But it was confined to the ancient Sanskrit classics. Swamiji brought it down to the common man in 19th century. In an age where scientists, humanists, communists, socialists, evolutionists, and many others were trying to question the foundations of established monotheistic traditions. And religion was on the verge of dying an unnatural death in the 19th century. People were not willing to accept such a religion. Say, Ingersoll, whom Swamiji himself meant to say, a modern man doesn't need a religion or a God whose entity cannot be demonstrated in the laboratory of science and technology. But Swamiji's answer would have been this. Of course, this encounter didn't take place, though Swamiji met him in another context. Say, God is not somebody whose existence should be or could be demonstrated or proved in the laboratory of science and technology, because it is our own inner consciousness. So it's called Atman as the immanent principle, Brahman as the for the origin of the universe, the sustaining principle of the universe, and also the destination of the entire creation. These are the revolutionary ideas. So Swamiji could tell the scientists that religion is as scientific as science itself. Religion is also an inquiry into truth, internal inquiry towards oneself. In the Rigveda Samhita, there is a suktam, it's called Nasadiya Suktam, Srishti Suktam, or the hymn of creation, in the 10th mandala. There, as I sometimes may have quoted earlier, it begins like this, Nasadasi Tadani, means in the beginning there was neither existence nor non-existence. So an ancient rishi went in search of the origin of the universe and made his inquiry in the external world. And ultimately he found that it could not be, the origin of the universe cannot be found in the external world. Ultimately he turned the inquiry inward. Then he found he himself was the one whom he was seeking. Sado bandhum asadi niravindan kriti pradesha kavayo manisha. When his mind became pure, he realized what he was investigating into within himself. And then he realized the same reality is all-pervading, omnipresent reality, the transcendental reality. That reality you may call by any name. Sri Ramakrishna himself graphically explains the gospel. It was Sri Ramakrishna who taught Swamiji all these fundamental ideas at the experiential level. So, you may call any name or you don't call any name. Whatever name you may call. And ultimately, the reality is, it is something that reality is something to be experienced within and not to be explained or defined or described. Because the reality is beyond description, beyond definition, beyond explanation. Vacha magojaratva yato vacho nivartante aprapi manasa saha. So many statements are there. It cannot be perceived by word. Words cannot describe or define them. Mind and words together went in search of this reality, thinking that they can explain. But ultimately they came back empty-handed. They could not explain it. Because it can only be experienced. And when we experience the reality, then we will understand there is no need to fight in the name of God or religion. So those who fight and argue in the name of God and religion are people who know nothing about it. Because religion is ultimately a matter of realization. Religion is spirituality. Religion is a matter of realizing the manifestation of the divinity already in man. And once we realize the divinity within us, we also realize the same reality is pervading everywhere. So, that is the great revolutionary message which Swamiji gave to Western world. So we have to understand these 2 points. One point is, whatever Swamiji preached was already enshrined in the Vedic literature, in the Upanishadic literature. But Swamiji, the credit for interpreting this in a modern language to a people who are on the verge of rejecting religion altogether, and when religion was on the verge of dying an unnatural death, by the onslaughts of communism, socialism, Darwin, evolutionism, and also modern positivists. At that age, Swamiji came and declared that religion is as scientific as science itself, much more humanistic than radical humanism or scientific humanism or whatever other, socialist humanism or whatever may be. And it is as rational as reason itself. That is the great contribution of Swami Vivekananda. Altogether, he gave a new paradigm to the very concept of religion. Now, nobody dares to tell you that one religion alone is true. No educated, enlightened person will be willing to listen patiently if somebody tells you that one religion alone is true, all other religions are false, all the rest are slowly marching towards hell. People won't believe that kind of things. That's all because of Swami Vivekananda. Directly or indirectly, he gave altogether a new revolutionary concept to religion. I have tried to give a brief outline within a very limited span of time. So Swamiji's contribution to religious thought. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. That's it. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.